We are on the cusp of a major social change. Do you feel it? Even if you don't, make no mistake, change is coming, and it is going to be unforgettable. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Hart, and here on Prime Spark, where we work with and on behalf of women over 55, I want to help you find that spark that will ignite your way forward, reflect your gifts to the world, and illuminate your path through this next stage of life. Through these podcast conversations, I hope to inspire you to see how you can make a significant contribution to some of the gnarly problems that are facing us right now. Join me, and together let's discover our Prime Spark. Hi, and welcome to Prime Spark. I'm Sarah Hart, and I'm so happy you're here with us. Prime Spark is designed for women over 50, or close, with a goal to help us all live our happiest, most fulfilling and productive lives, now and in the future. The mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. That's a big mission, which only means we all need to be involved and we need to get going now. And today I have the pleasure of talking with Abigail Tiefenthaler, a woman whose work I greatly admire. Known as the marketing leverage strategist, Abigail Tiefenthaler is the co-founder of Savvy Sales Strategy, a marketing and sales agency that supports professional women with marketing activities that bring more qualified prospects into sales conversations. Abigail honed her strategic marketing skills working on Fortune 100 brands. Her superpower is identifying unique marketing solutions that overcome sales challenges. Today, Abigail and her business partner, Tami Crea, use their 80-plus years of experience and expertise to help clients work with more clients, realize success, and transition from practitioner to CEO of their own businesses. Welcome, Abigail. I'm so happy you're here today.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm glad to be here.
So in getting started, let me just ask you, do you experience getting older? And if you do, what is that experience? And if you don't, why is it that you think that you don't?
Well, I think that's a two-sided question. I think mentally, I don't experience getting older. Physically, I'll occasionally have the bumps and grinds that come with age.
Yeah. Well, Abigail, I have talked to so many women over the last several years, and I'll bet you 85, 90 at least percent say something very similar to what you've said. Many of us we don't feel mentally we're getting older. We don't feel any way that we're getting older. In fact, most of us feel in many ways we're getting better, except physically. And of course, there are some physical things that happen. That is pretty much what we all feel. So tell me, Abigail, have you always been an entrepreneur?
26 of my 40-plus year career has been as an entrepreneur.
And what did you do before?
I spent my first 15 years in corporate. I worked for New York City ad agencies, Philadelphia ad agencies, and then I worked on the client side for Sandoz Pharmaceuticals on their over-the-counter product line, Triamenic, X-Lax, and then Mrs. Smith Pies, where I was in new product development. So I always say I had it coming and going.
Why did you decide to leave corporate and start your own?
Well, I didn't really make the decision to do it as much as the decision was made for me. I was originally relocating from the Philadelphia to the Florida area back in 1997. I originally was going to partner with two gentlemen. So that was a step because that was a smaller entrepreneurial space. And that imploded 3 weeks into our working relationship. I had no contract. I had moved my kids down, but my husband was still in the Philadelphia area. And we made the decision to stay down in Florida. But I had to do something. I had to make money. I had been, not the breadwinner, but I had contributed significantly to the household. Our kids were 2 and 5. So it was important that I do something. And I looked at ad agencies in the Florida market, and they just didn't have the same depth, if you will, as the agencies I had come from in New York and Philadelphia. So I started my own business.
It occurs to me, if you start your career in marketing in New York and Philadelphia, it's going to be hard to go somewhere else and have the same level of sophistication. I mean, where do you go after New York? I mean, really, you know.
Well, and I'm a daughter of the industry. My dad was Madison Avenue BBD&O in the 60s. My mother was Madison Avenue BBD&O in the 60s. Then when my dad went out on his own, my mom was out on her own. She was running a home-based business, but everything was marketing related. So, I often will tell people, if you meet somebody who has more experience than I do, I'd like to know them, because I not only go wide, but I go deep as well, just from the way, my life unfolded.
So I was going to ask you what led you into marketing, but I think it's
The bigger question is, what else could I have done if I hadn't done marketing? And there was never an answer.
Did you think about doing anything else at all ever?
No,
So now you work with mostly women business owners, right?
we do. Yes.
And what's the biggest mistake most small business entrepreneurs make that you run into?
Well, again, I'm in the marketing space, right? So if you don't have marketing, you don't have sales. And so there's a lot of, coaches and service-based business owners that are trying to find clients, or trying to get clients, or trying to make money. And the biggest mistake that they make is truly they don't go deep enough. They really don't understand their why well enough to use it as a superpower, and they don't have the confidence around it. And then they don't really understand the problem they solve well enough to create disruptive messaging that compels their ideal client to seek them out.
And when you say disruptive messaging, what do you mean by that?
I mean, it's got to be something that stops the scroll. It's got to be something that says, wait a minute, I haven't heard that before. I wonder what she's talking about. Wait a minute, that makes sense. I want to get to know this person.
So it disrupts us in our daily routine to say, what is that? I haven't heard of that.
I mean, we talk about disruptive messaging a lot in the marketing world. I mean, I've seen other coaches and marketing people, talk about it. What I define as disruptive is where, you're so convicted to the problem you solve that you can shout it from a mountaintop, and everybody knows you as the lead generation specialist, as the love specialist, as the sleep specialist, right? It's creating a very singular message. I am not a fan of changing how you show up. Don't be a chameleon on social media. You want to be, you want your stripes to be out there front and center, right? Always the same, in the same location 24/7. So you want your messaging to be very driven by, number one, who you are and what you do and why you do it. But it has to appeal to, who has the problem that you can solve, and why they need it, and why they're willing to pay to have it solved. Because what else is it stopping in their world?
So I was going to ask you what the first piece of advice you give to somebody when they come to you as a client. And I suspect it's, why are you doing what you're doing, or something like that?
Well, it's not the first piece of advice I give, but it's the first question that we ask when somebody wants more sales. We say, number one, if you want more sales, you've got to do more marketing. And number two, what is it that's going to make your marketing stand out from anybody else who's in your competitive space, not just from a problem solving, but from a money solving as well? Because you could be a yoga instructor. Let's use that as an example. So you're a yoga instructor and you're now doing online classes, and you focus on, you're a yoga instructor. So you don't focus on anything, but people are looking for results, they could go to a personal trainer. They could, decide they're going to join a Y. There's a lot of different ways they could spend the money and still reap some of the benefits of being, of doing yoga. So the question is, why is yoga the thing that that person should be doing over and above working with a trainer, doing something else?
So is somebody's why connected to how the client is different after they work with the person?
You mean the transformation?
Yeah.
Yes, to some degree, because the best whys are you've had that experience. And so what that transformation did in your life. And hopefully that transformation can, be achieved with the people you work with, right? Or at least some degree that's going to give them the freedom to not feel that the problem is controlling their life. But at the same time, I mean, something like me, I work with people who have gone through a whole bunch of different things that I've never been through. So it's connecting that why to the problem and to why that prospect needs it fixed because of all of the things that are happening as a result of that problem being the elephant in the room of their business or their personal life.
Right. In your opinion, has marketing gotten harder since the pandemic or easier, or is it about the same? I mean, it seems to me that whole thing had such an impact on society in general. And I'm wondering if you see it in marketing.
Well, I mean, I don't know that I would use COVID as the changing point in marketing. What COVID did was it flooded the market with people who wanted to be entrepreneurs. So it flooded the market with people who don't know how to market. So I'm not going to use that as what's really happened. Marketing today is infinitely more difficult than it was in the old days. And part of that is because a lot of people believe they can market themselves. They can believe by showing up on social media that they're marketing. A lot of people are buying solutions to problems they think they have without really diagnosing to see if that's the symptom or the root cause of the problem. There's a lot of people who really don't want to be marketers. So they're taking the path of least resistance and using templates and using, things that may have worked for the person who's selling that, but doesn't work for 90% of the population. So truthfully, I don't think marketing itself is any more difficult, but I think we've created an environment of complexity and these skill set experts who, well, I can fix your email, I can fix your website, I can do your social media, I can give you a graphic identity, but nobody's talking to each other. And you don't really understand marketing to understand how all of that should be integrated and aligned.
It sounds like our healthcare system.
Not all that. Okay. Yeah. I'll agree to that.
Just when you were describing that, I was thinking about a woman I was talking to the other day that was bemoaning how this doctor doesn't talk to this doctor who doesn't talk to and don't know the medications and the symptoms and so forth. And so it was fresh in my mind when you were saying that. So there are a lot more channels to market on than there used to be, aren't there?
Well, yeah. I mean, in the old days, you basically had in-store, right? If you were selling a product, you focused on merchandising the product you were selling. So by shelf location, by end cap, by, did you have signage? What did that look like? You had outdoor advertising, you had TV, you had radio, you had print, and you had TV, radio, print, newspaper and magazine, right? So you had those basic channels. Now, I mean, social media is definitely a great marketing platform, depending upon how you use it, but you can't just use social media as the main thing. Are you doing organic? Are you doing paid? Are you doing posting? Are you building visibility? Are you driving traffic someplace? There's a whole lot of nuances to marketing. And there's definitely more moving parts because in the old day, you placed an ad or you did a commercial and you drove traffic somewhere, where now you've got so much noise out there. The number of times you have to market to somebody so that they actually see hear and act on something has changed, as well as how we take them through that process.
As you were talking, I suddenly remembered I had this vivid image of having people put postcards on my car.
Okay.
That used to happen all the time.
You've come
And
out of the
now
grocery
when I have
store.
a postcard on my car, it startles me because I'm afraid it's a ticket, because it doesn't happen anymore. And it used to happen all the time.
Well, and it was innocuous. I mean, it was a fundraiser for the Boy Scouts. It was, buy two, get one free kind of deal at a store that was nearby where in the shopping mall where you were. And today, I think a lot of people don't want to do that. Number one, they don't want to walk up and down a mall. Number two, they're selling services, not products. So they don't need to drive traffic somewhere. I mean, a physical, like foot traffic somewhere. But there's probably, restaurants that do it in shopping centers where there's a grocery store. There's probably some of it still happening.
No, it probably is. I was trying to think about when is the last time I had a postcard on my car, and I couldn't remember it.
Yeah.
So, Abigail, you have so many years of experience with this. And when you look back and when you look now, what are you doing now that is most meaningful for you?
As it relates to my work, I think it's really shouting from the mountaintop the importance of strategy, and letting not being apologetic about saying to some being honest and going, you don't have any prospects scheduling calls with you because you don't have any marketing building that funnel, right? You don't have, your marketing isn't saying anything. You've got gaps here and here. So I think it's getting stronger and stepping into the voice, hopefully in a kind and tactful manner, but not really being afraid to say, look, I've got to be able to use my 40 years of experience somehow. And so guess what? Today's your day.
So when I ask you that, you paused wondering if it was business or personal. So what are you doing now in your personal life that is most meaningful?
I spending more time spending more time with my husband. My husband's a travel nurse, so he's gone 3 nights a week and is in a different state. And when he's home, us being a little more sensitive to my calendar, where when my kids were little and my business was at 7 figures and, I had a staff of 4, I took calls at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. So, I took calls on the line at Disney, while we were waiting to get into some ride. And I had my husband take the kids, away for the weekend because there was a softball tournament, but I had to work. So I think now just being a little more sensitive to my boundaries, they didn't really exist in my, 30s and 40s. So I think that's definitely just appreciating this a slightly slower pace. Believe it or not, that text can get answered in a half an hour. It doesn't have to be answered right away. That email can get answered, at another time. So,
how old are your children now? They're not children anymore.
No, they're still my babies, though. They may not be children, but they're still my babies. I have a daughter who's 29 who lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and I have another daughter who will be 32 in August, and she lives in Wellington, Florida.
So both of them are in Florida and you're in Tennessee?
Yeah, well, we moved. First, we moved to South Carolina, and then we moved a couple of years ago to Tennessee. And they chose to stay in Florida, the little rats. So I keep on trying to get my Florida daughter from South Florida closer to me. My Jacksonville daughter doesn't have any plans on leaving Jacksonville anytime soon.
Well, you took them to Florida originally, and there they stayed.
Yep, they were 2 and 5.
Yeah.
When they first hit the state. So we moved just so that my 5-year-old could get into kindergarten on time. It was the right decision. They both have lives and friends and businesses that, careers that they enjoy where they live.
That is the most important thing, actually.
It is.
So of the things you have done, what are you proudest of? What 3 things are you proudest of all the things you've done?
I would say that I really loved the fact that I was on the team that created the first ever starter kit in the oral contraceptive market. Because it truly was thinking outside the box. The challenge was presented to us in a challenging way. Like, this is what's happening with our competition, and we don't have anything to say to offset it. So what do you suggest? It's like, okay, we'll take that dare. And we went in and presented 5 different ideas, and our client became a client. He was a prospect at the time and bought 2 of them. And one was the starter kit. And it was so brilliantly simple that I really am proud of it as a finished product. And I was even more proud when Wyeth, who finally had a new oral contraceptive to sell a year or 2 later, came to me and said, we need another starter kit because we want ours to be unique. So it became the first starter kit for a lifestyle drug. And it did exactly what it was supposed to do, which was take up more share of the sample closet. It's still, as I understand it, in use today. So, if you can create something that's still around, that's not too shabby. 20 years, 30 years,
and something that people needed.
Exactly. That was in the early 90s. That's one of the things I'm most proud of. I think number 2, creating a 7-figure business on my own that achieved 7 figures its second year in business and becoming one of the top 5% in my industry, which was the promotional products distributorship side. That was pretty cool. We toasted to champagne, and I went and bought myself a diamond ring, to celebrate. So that was really cool. And the third thing, I love my partnership with Tami, and I think we've done some really good work. I think there's more work to be done there, but just acknowledging what I don't do well and having Tami by my side, who does all those things that I don't do well because she believes the things I do, she doesn't do as well. So we've created a business that has a kite and an anchor and allows our clients to, not just be told what to do, but be helped through doing it. So, we're not a coach, we're not a consultant. We actually are an agency that does the work alongside our clients. So I think that's something to be proud of, because in this day and age, everybody wants to offload the responsibilities. Like, they're really great at bringing clients in, but nobody's interested in working with that client, delivering what they've promised. Not no one, but a lot of a lot of people are more interested in the transaction than they are in the.
So did you have any problems in that whole world you've been in for a long time now as a woman?
Not that I've noticed. And, I've always said that I can be a little obtuse sometimes, which I think can serve you well. I remember the year I did $1 million, I decided to join the chamber, and I went to a chamber meeting, and this very tall man, I've told this story before, but this very tall man kind of looks down at me at this chamber function, and I'm 5'2". So that's why I'm saying he's looking down at me literally, and says, "Oh, what do you do?" And he goes, "Where do you work?" was what he asked. What he asked. And I said, "Well, I work out of my house." And he dismissed me right away. He thought I was some woman who, I don't know, sold Tupperware or Mary Kay. And not that there's anything wrong with anybody in the direct sales business. I know a number of people who have been extremely successful and make more money than most entrepreneurs do. He just, that was kind of the point in which I really said, you know what, I am going to focus on supporting women. And I was working with corporate clients at the time, FP&L and Wyeth Ayerst and American Express and Republic Services, like corporate clients, with my promotional business. But I decided and got very involved in 2000 with women's networking, and was one of the founding members of a group that was in Weston, Florida, where I lived at the time. And then I started with 3 other women, a group that we launched in West Palm Beach, and I brought up to South Carolina, and I was introduced to eWomen I guess it was 2020. It was a natural fit for me to really say, this is a perfect community, because they are interested in knowing what I know and supporting me so I can support them. Right. So I don't really think that being a woman in the advertising world stopped me. I mean, I do know the men that were at my level made more money than I did. That much I am fully aware of. We did feel like we had to work a little bit harder. I will say that as well, but it didn't stop me or derail me.
It's really interesting. You were living in Florida. You were doing the work. You were supporting two children. So far as they knew, you were the major breadwinner for your whole family.
I was at that time, yes.
And you didn't make as much money as the men did.
Well, no, when I went into entrepreneurship, that's when, yeah. I mean, working in advertising, I think sometimes it's the luck of the draw. And back in when I first started my career in New York City, I know there were men making more than I was at the same title. And I never really thought much about it. Although I guess what it did was start setting up the disappointment in building a career in corporate. If I was always going to have to be one rung below somebody who was doing maybe the same thing I was. And I didn't have a voice at that time. I was like, oh, be a good girl, play the game. You know, we should be seen and not heard. You've got a seat in the room, even though you don't have a seat at the table. Like, be appreciative of all of that, right? Versus going, I'm mad and this is wrong. Then when I moved to Florida, I ended up starting my own business. So that never became an issue.
Right.
And, I was the breadwinner because my husband was a painter and wallpaper at the time, and then decided to go to nursing school. So for 3 years, he brought in basically nothing because nursing school is not for the weak of heart.
Right. That's interesting. When you were describing that, I think back to my early years in corporate and in graduate school, actually. And I'm fascinated now by the fact that I didn't get mad about things. How did it was so just natural to have it happen that way that it didn't occur to me to be angry about it.
Yeah, and I think, who did we talk to? Chances are we talked, I talked to my mother. My mother's like, oh, that's the way it is. There was no build up the resolve and go in. I mean, I'm so proud. My younger daughter is, I remember, I had the amazing luck of being able to listen to her negotiate a new job over the Christmas holidays a couple of years ago because she was working in an office that was in where we were staying, and she turned the job down. Basically she discussed it with me and decided to write them a letter and say thank you but no thank you. But even on the call, she was like, I really have to give my current employer right of first refusal if they can match the price, and if they can match the salary and all of that. And she's just having this conversation so confidently. Now, whether she was shaking in her boots or not, I don't really know. But at the same time, I sat there and I said, man, if I had had her sense of self-worth that she had at 26, that I had at 26, who knows where I'd be today, But we didn't, because it wasn't really a part of who we were as women. And truthfully, I think she could do that 3 years ago because of who we were as women, right? That we've paved a lot of paths to allow our daughters and our granddaughters and our nieces, and our daughters, our friends' children to go, you know what, that's not right, or that doesn't work for me, or yes, thanks, but no thanks. And ultimately they came back to her and hired her, and she's been there almost 3 years. So I have another daughter who doesn't necessarily have that confidence in herself. So she's had a slightly different career path, but just, I figured 50%, I'm ahead of the game, 1 out of 2, right?
Yeah. 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 Oh, that's really, I was thinking about when I had gotten my master's degree and I really wanted to get my PhD. And I talked to my main advisor, and he said, oh, Sarah, there's nothing wrong with your work, but we only have so much money and we need to save it for the men because they will get married and have families and have to take care of them. And so, and I said, oh, okay. And I knew something was wrong with that, but I didn't know what. But a good friend of mine and I went out. We were in school in Evanston, Illinois, which was dry at the time. I don't know about now. And so we couldn't go get a drink. So we went out and ate bunches of ice cream. And in retrospect, I was probably furious somewhere, but it wasn't conscious. I was just, oh, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, to see the path that's happened and to know that we were a part of that path, no matter how quiet we were, is I think a good starting point for being okay with it.
And you did, and I did get to eat a lot of ice cream, so
I mean, ice cream is not bad.
So we're about out of time, Abigail, but tell me what's next for you? So you've scaled back a little bit. Any plans for any dreams you haven't realized that you'd really like to get on with at some point? Or
well, I mean, here's the thing. I think we are working a little more efficiently, because I wouldn't say I've scaled back on my business. I'm probably more passionate about that today than I was 10 years ago. Just because I really do think I bring a message to the community that people haven't thought about, because nobody is suggesting they think about it, and they're not going deep enough, the people who are. And I guess next it's really sharing the message on more stages and getting those opportunities to have people think about marketing from a slightly different perspective. Marketing is not the first step. Marketing is the step before, and people don't understand. A lot of business owners don't understand the connection between marketing and sales. They think they're the same. There's misinformation out there. The processes, they're both very distinct disciplines with an interconnectivity and an interdependence around it. But that's my goal, is to be as vocal as I can about people when they're making mistakes around their marketing.
We do connect. I mean, when we say marketing, I think many of us automatically think and sales, marketing and sales, marketing and sales, marketing and sales, and we conflate them. Oh, Abigail, this has been wonderful, and I'm sure people are going to want to get in touch with you. So if they do, how can they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I have a website, savvysalesstrategy.com. There, even on both of those platforms, LinkedIn and Facebook, I have my phone number in there and an email address. So and again, the beautiful thing about having the name Abigail Tiefenthaler is there's only one of me that I know of.
I Googled you and you're the only one that came up.
So there you go.
There you go. Okay, thank you. So that's our time today. Please join us again. You can find our Prime Spark podcast on every popular outlet. Find out more about Prime Spark at primesparkwomen.com. Thank you so much to my guest, Abigail Tiefenthaler. And don't forget, you can find her many places. Probably the easiest right now to remember is savvysalesstrategy.com. Her name is, it'll be in the notes, but her name is Tiefenthaler, and there's only one of her. So put that in, you'll get it. So thank you for being with us. Take care. Spread tolerance and love. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode and would like to stay updated, you can head over to my website, primesparkwomen.com, and get my free Spark Guide, 7 questions to ignite your spark, to help you discover your own spark. See you in the next episode.